Hello and welcome to my presentation, The Meaning Behind a Pilgrim Welcome. I choose this title very carefully and deliberately. The word meaning features quite prominently throughout this presentation, as you will see. It is a word that keeps coming up again and again in all the data and feedback that I'm collecting from pilgrims. And I like to start this presentation with this slide. It just is an example of how you can change a culture in a place like a cathedral. Once you empower your staff to follow their instincts and be part of something, their instincts are generally and usually very good, and they will rise to the challenge. And when our head of constabulary invited his staff to get behind pilgrimage and play a role in the pilgrim welcome here, well, they certainly did rise to the challenge and are doing a really admirable job, which makes me so proud to receive feedback like this from pilgrims. The constable greeted me at the gate with warmth, understanding and empathy. This was out of hours, so everything was locked up and we'd all gone home. But look at those words that they used to describe that welcome: warmth, understanding, empathy. They just knew what the pilgrim might have been going through, arriving at the cathedral after such a long journey and everything that they'd been through. And look how they felt. They responded to that. They felt rewarded, accepted, at the end of what we all know is an emotional journey. If you have anything to do with pilgrimage, you'll understand that emotion. So it's almost like mission accomplished when I put this slide up, and it's nice to see. It was a real pleasure and a delight to see that. And the guy's doing such a great job at the front gate, because normally people have a bit of a problem seeing police officers in their uniform at cathedrals, but it just goes to show how we can turn that around and bring them into this wonderful mission of pilgrimage. The second slide I like to concentrate on before I crack on with the presentation is this word communitas, because I like just to break down a few descriptions of this word that I found: a powerful, unstructured sense of human connection and solidarity. These descriptions are very, very powerful and quite profound. A temporary state of intense collective experience. It transcends social structures. It's deep and it's spontaneous, which is another really key phrase there. Arising in anti-structural environments like festivals and rituals such as pilgrimage. Normal social orders dissolve. It's a powerful feeling, a collective belonging. Social distinctions are suspended, and it's transformational, connecting people at their deepest shared essence, and creating intense bonds. These are quite sort of powerful words being used to describe communitas. And for me, it manifests in pilgrimage, in my experience, in the communal sharing of meals, accommodation, and of course in shared stories. So to crack on with the story, here I am in the middle of Spain, walking to Compostela, lost in many ways. I was in a real dark place at the time, and just been through quite a serious upheaval in life. And this isn't a sob story, and I'm not looking for sympathy. I just want to describe this as an added layer of the pilgrimage experience on top of everything that you do experience from the communitas angle, which is something outside of the mundane cycle of life, something that maybe one isn't quite prepared for. And yet that intense experience that you experience is a layer on top of what you're probably already going through on a personal basis. And a lot of pilgrims do walk with very, very emotional baggage or burdens on them, aside from their rucksack. And so this is just describing my journey that I went through. And not only was I carrying this great emotional weight with me from what had happened, but I also was walking in the wrong season. So most of the hostels were closed and facilities and cafes, and it wasn't as busy as people normally experience during the spring and summer months. So by the time I arrived at Compostela, it was a celebration to have finally made it, but I wasn't prepared for this, that I was equally struck with a deep and profound sense of despair that the journey was over, and a great sense of loss in a way. I was facing the question of what next, dealing with the emotional cocktail of arriving with everything that was going on in my life, that sense of layers and layers of communitas that I intensely experienced for 35 days. So by the time I got here, yes, I ditched the sackcloth and ashes, and my very generous sister put me up in this. I lived like Solomon for 2 nights in the Hospital del Rey, but I spent 2 days very, very depressed and down in Compostela. Spent the rest of the year kicking around Spain because I couldn't face coming back to England, but when I eventually did, it was to read a degree at theology at Christ Church University at the age of 60. But I needed a part-time student job, as most students do, and I was lucky enough to find a job checking tickets here at the cathedral in a role that was at the time called a shepherd. The gentleman I'm with here is called Sandy Brown. You may recognise him. He's a much beloved figure in the world of pilgrimage. He found me out very early when he learned what I was doing with pilgrims here and came to support me and celebrate what I was doing and to give me his complete backing. He's a great man. He wrote the Cicerone guidebooks of the Via Francigena. Anyway, when I arrived at the cathedral, the job I was undertaking put me directly in touch with pilgrims turning up at the door. And I realised that our pilgrim welcome at the time at the cathedral was woefully lacking, in so much that it was just a stamp in your pilgrim pass and have a nice day, there's the cathedral. And I started to feel that this was wrong, because I was very sensitive to the fact that pilgrims may be turning up to Canterbury Cathedral in the same state that I turned up at Compostela. And so I started to feel that a lot more needed to be done, and scratch beneath the surface and make a bit more of a celebration and a congratulations to the pilgrims, take them to the pilgrim stone, maybe even ask what their journey was about and why they were walking journey. And as soon as I did start asking those questions, obviously great stories of emotion, of sometimes terrible bereavement, tragic loss, bad medical news, all sorts, and some a thanksgiving for a good life, but generally they were quite sad stories, and people were very, very thankful to have the opportunity to articulate what they were going through. And of course, when I asked if they would like a blessing, that's usually where the tears started to flow. So I knew I was doing the right thing, tapping into something good here. I was working in the background without really officially being sanctioned to do it. But everyone was very supportive here for me to take pilgrims to the pilgrim stone, take a photograph of them. I started up an Instagram account where I could celebrate those images of pilgrims, and I started a survey that people could fill in to tell us a little bit more about their journey, because at the time I was reading theology, and my dissertation I decided was going to be about the transformational power of pilgrimage. And so I thought I could use a lot of this data over 3 years to help me with my dissertation, which it certainly did. And I really knew that my instincts were right, because it wasn't too long before I got some feedback which said this: it was nice and I was made to feel welcome, but I would have liked to be asked to share my experience. No one asked me any questions like where I'm from, how I'm doing, how my pilgrimage went. So I knew I'd tapped into something quite serious, and that motivated me to keep going. So I built a website for people to upload their stories in a 200 or 500 anonymous, if they wished, account of why they were walking pilgrimage, so I could collect stories in the same way that the monk Benedict did here in the crypt in 1171. Over the years he collected 700 odd stories, and they were obviously, as you know, translated into the beautiful stained glass. We have here this unique collection of stained glass that we have, and so I've got 6 or 7 of these stories now, which hopefully can be interpreted into some art form later down the line to continue this wonderful tradition, 12th century, 13th century tradition. But pilgrimage is all about tradition, so I went about trying to redesign our pilgrim stamp, which was again woefully inadequate. It didn't celebrate the majesty of this cathedral and the importance of the site, so I wanted to make a very big and prominent pilgrim stamp, which I think we achieved using the scallop shell as the international symbol of pilgrimage, turned upside down, which really sort of indicates all roads leading out of Canterbury and to Canterbury as the premier site for pilgrimage in the UK, and a little Latin there, it is healed or solved by walking, which I think could even date back to the Stoics, if not beyond. And I always tell people, if you've wrestling with something, take a walk around the block and you'll probably find an answer before you hit send on that email. Take a walk around the block. So it features in our lives, throughout our lives, and especially in pilgrimage. I then went about bringing about a redesign of the Pilgrim Passport, an introduction of bookmarks with a QR code on the back as well as a pilgrim prayer, but the QR code especially so that people could keep on filling in their survey electronically at their leisure rather than writing sheets of paper on the spot, which they used to have to do in the visitor centre. And then, of course, I wanted to introduce a certificate, the same as you'd get at Compostela or Testimonian in Rome. And so we've got these three things now we can offer pilgrims when they arrive, which is this pilgrim package. I like to take people out to the waymarker there that's in the cobbled stones pointing to Rome. We've got a tradition of getting pilgrims to stand around that so they can take a photograph of their feet around the pilgrim waymarker, which a lot of people happily engage in. And then, of course, there's the scallop shell on the wicket gate there, which brings that, again, that wonderful symbol of pilgrimage right to our doorstep. We have so many symbols from Spain and Compostela on our doorstep at the Christchurch Gate, which I'll show you in a minute. Then I take pilgrims to the Via Francigena pilgrim stone. Even though it is marked for the Via Francigena, I bring all pilgrims to that stone because it's a very symbolic and significant place to really ground yourself and take a moment to reflect on your last step, or your first step if you're about to take off, obviously. But for your last step, if people do arrive, it's a wonderful moment when they can really cherish that feeling that they've made it, and as congratulations, you're here and the journey's over. And that's a lot of the time when people do really start to get that wonderful feeling that it's all done. It's quite an emotional moment. I then take them inside the cathedral to show them the panels of stained glass windows that I was describing, depicting the stories of pilgrims collected by Benedict, and then round up the pilgrim welcome with a blessing from one of our chaplains. So that is the little cycle of pilgrim welcome that I've introduced here at the cathedral, which takes time, and I personally do it as much as I can, but the effects of that have been more profound than I could ever have expected, as we'll see later on when I show you some of the feedback I've been getting from my survey. Quick little point to the links to Compostela. We have the coat of arms of Catherine of Aragon, which feature Leon, the Lion of Leon, and the castles of Castile. And we have the scallop shell on the wicket gate, half a scallop shell on the Christchurch Gate, so when they're closed they reveal a full scallop shell there, and then the two scallop shells on the ceiling, which you can just about see linking the Tudor rose. And there she is on the right hand side, that sculpture of Catherine of Aragon. So the Camino Inglés would have passed through here from East Anglia and London, Southwark, Rochester, Canterbury, down to Sandwich, which was the bigger port at the time, or Dover, or even Hythe. So we are a credible route for the Camino Inglés here. So let me move on to some of my data, because what struck me when I first started doing this research was that when I offered a chance to the multiple choice here, I restricted it to one choice only, and lo and behold, the biggest choice of all, spiritual, was way out there above everything else, which really struck me at the time, because I seemed to be bombarded with constant reports and data that we are an irreligious country and religion is falling away in this country. And look, here we are in this chart right down at the bottom as a public least likely to see themselves as religious. So what would possibly make spirituality then, above faith and culture and everything else, be the main reason for walking pilgrimage? I thought it was worth investigating, and I got this lovely entry into my data from this young man who claimed himself to be an atheist in search of something meaningful. Well, there's that word, right? I said right at the very beginning, meaning is going to keep popping up again and again throughout this study. So he's an atheist, but he's looking for meaning in life. What is the reason for your pilgrimage? He said it was personal change. And then he further wrote, the road is unknown, the goal is meaningless, yet here I walk one step after another. Well, clearly personal change is not a meaningless goal at all. And yet that led me to think, what is it in this confident world of individuality, science and technology that this young man is looking for? And it seemed to me that our higher calling was compelling this young man out into the unknown on a big life adventure, to leave everything behind that he knows, everything that is secure, familiar, and a journey which is both outward to strange new places and inward to this spiritual improvement, this personal change, something meaningful that he's looking for. And why, I asked myself, was this atheist? What was he doing standing here on sacred ground of Canterbury Cathedral, about to embark on an ancient religious ritual of pilgrimage to the other sacred site of the Eternal City in Rome? Worth investigating. So I dug a little deeper into my data and started finding these entries. And I'll just read a few of them. We both feel it's a spiritual journey, though neither of us subscribes to a particular religion, but there's that word spiritual. Atheist, but understanding that the culture around pilgrimage has the power to move. Atheist, open to a sense of the spiritual. Spiritual, but not religious. Spiritual, but not practicing. Atheist in search of something meaningful. No longer a member of the church, but wanting to find meaning in life. Spiritual, experiential. I am very spiritual. It just went on and on. These days, more spiritual than religious. And I love this last entry. These people who obviously go on a lot of walking holidays, but they were open to a blessing when they arrived at Canterbury Cathedral. They were offered a blessing, and they were open enough to take that blessing, and they said it was a very meaningful experience, different to previous walking holidays. I love that. So there is something here. Atheists, open to spirituality, looking for meaning. Then I had that sort of thesis I was working on validated in the press by certain articles I was finding. This young youth movement in Europe now, their manifesto is based around young people looking for a sense and meaning, young generation looking for a sense of meaning. And in the Times, why are people going back to church? They're looking for lost meaning and connection. So, there's something going on out there, which led me forward in this research. I love the fact I read and follow Ian McGilchrist a lot with his books, The Master and His Emissary and The Matter with Things. And I loved his sentence that even though people may be atheist or irreligious, as Mercier Eliade would say, it's camouflaged in modern man, but they cannot deny that kind of yearning must be, or they cannot deny some form of acknowledgement that there is something bigger than us, that it is creative and evident throughout the universe. And I got this lovely entry in my data, a sense of alignment with a higher calling, mysterious though that calling remains. So I can understand this, people looking for meaning in life that maybe they cannot find in the modern world, and of course they can't find it, in my opinion. This is an obvious pathway forward, but it's lovely to see it manifesting right before my eyes, and I'm in a great place to experience this firsthand at the cathedral. So then I opened up the list of reasons for pilgrimage, instead of being a one-off choice, to multiple choices. And at first I was a little bit upset and put back because I thought, well, everything else is coming up just as strong as spiritual, culture and history and adventure and hiking. But I thought, no, take a step back, and there's a thesis here somewhere which I worked on, and I came to the conclusion that people are looking for meaning, and that's the adventure part of it, asking the big questions of life and death and suffering. There's a connection with family, friends, culture and nature. It is a quest and adventure. And they're looking back to the old ways to connect with those meaningful things, or to seek those meaningful things which they cannot find in the modern world. So therefore we've got cultural and history coming through. And of course, with an eye on sustainable tourism and climate sensitivity, hiking is the obvious way to go in search for that. So all of these things are pointing to pilgrimage, and all of them fulfill this thesis that I have, that people are looking for meaning through and the only way they can articulate that is through the use of the word spiritual. So to conclude this, if I can read through this quickly, the word meaning is cropping up, especially amongst the more secular minded. And so I think people are looking for a sense of meaning in life. They're looking back to the old ways in that quest. I wrote an analogy in my dissertation that we abandoned the village well, the ancient village well, to go in search of bottled water at the shopping mall instead. But the liturgies of malls and marketplaces have proved to be an empty box, as maybe have the promises of science and technology. So we're returning to Ralph Metzner's The Well of Remembrance in our search for meaning. With religious tourism growing, the ancient pilgrimage routes offer a perfect way to travel with environmental sensitivity to sacred spaces and structures of meaning for people seeking personal change of some description. And the opportunity to experience intense bonds with nature and other people, that communitas, is provided along with an openness to a certain spirituality or otherness which exists beyond the mundane aspects of everyday life. So it's people stepping out into the unknown in their search for meaning, and pilgrimage offers a perfect opportunity for those turning to or returning to faith. I call this a post-God is dead era, and of course with our doors open approach here at these churches and cathedrals, and the churches in our diocese are opening more and more for this reason, all keeping pilgrim stamps. We can provide the opportunity, that gentle invite for those people to experience what religious people see as transcendent realities. Now, I do love a word cloud, and this is the words that pop up to the surface from 400 odd people writing and expressing their feelings walking pilgrimage. So just kind of a nice thing to look at, with some nice words there of freedom, peace, excitement. Humbling is a good one. Connection with God, others, family, and the sense of being free. Anyways, that's just a nice little display of words. And more of my research found more contemporary people in the world of pilgrimage, like Guy Hayward, who sees the emotional well-being as part of a broader sociological trend. He thinks that the rise of pilgrimage is a part of the shift from the age of knowledge, which I'm now calling the post-God is dead era, which has dominated the past 3 centuries. We're moving into the age of experience, and similarly, Dee Dyer's, I quote her here, which I did in my dissertation, as saying that research in America suggests emotion is the main trigger for reasoning and change of behaviour. And that's important to her because she thinks that sacred spaces and shrines, how they make people feel is consequentially very important. And so let's look at some feelings. These are quite nice. It's very freeing and feels more real than normal life, was someone's expression. Interested, enthused, connected to nature and the history of pilgrimage age. The meeting of local people and visiting parish churches, there's that sense of communitas, discovering that external journey, going out into the unknown and meeting strange people and into strange places or different places, which is inevitable to such an endeavour. I felt fully myself on the road. At the cathedral, it was like being welcomed home. And I've loved a sense of connection with nature, history of incredible churches, immensely grateful for the kindness from everyone. There's that sense of communitas, that rich sense of communitas, leaving behind the everyday, the mundane cycle of life in search for deeper things of God, and wonderful scenery, pubs, churches. People were absolutely wonderful. So a wonderful, rich experience in that sense of communitas again. Now I'm going to run through the next few pages on some pilgrim feedback. Now, you know, it's very wordy, but I think it's worthwhile pausing and reading some of these reflections, because I think it needs to be shared, it needs to be seen, and the words people use, the phrase people use. So, you know, I won't sort of, you can pause this, it's a video, so you can obviously pause it and read through at your leisure, but I'll just pick out some bits and pieces. These people, I remember them, they were rushing down the high street to make it to Evensong. I was going out to do some shopping, work was over, and I was on my way home, and I saw them and went running over to them and ran back with them to the cathedral and promised them I'd have stamp, certificate and bookmarks ready for them in the constabulary. And they went into Evensong, and I told them when they went in to ask for a pilgrim blessing, to say that they're walking pilgrimage. And Canon Emma was summoned afterwards by the stewards, very kindly came and took them to the site of St. Thomas's, where the shrine used to be, gave us a beautiful and moving blessing. We couldn't have imagined a more special end to our journey. That's how important the pilgrim blessing has become. And then back to the constables, of course, Graham was there giving him the stamps and passports, helping them find their accommodation. So again, we have pilgrimages in our DNA here. We're a pilgrimage family through and through. And then the next day they came back and met another member of clergy here, and had a lovely chat with them. So the whole experience was positive and special. Here we have separate feedback from different people. Amazing, feeling of peace and love. Another one, we pilgrims are so lucky to have you as our guide, resource and inspiration. That's very kind of them. Thank you very much. Wonderful welcome at Canterbury, and this was one of the highlights of our pilgrimage from Canterbury to Rome, and they did contact me and say that the welcome they got at Canterbury far exceeded the welcome they received at Rome, and indeed far exceeded the welcome they received at Compostela a few years previous to that. We were heartened by the warm welcome and support we received, which was totally unexpected, especially as you show, enhance and underline the significance of pilgrimage as a spiritual experience in one's life. So that was really great feedback to show that what we're doing here is really having a genuinely profound effect on people. Thank you for the warm welcome, showing genuine involvement. Good to see how you take the pilgrimage so seriously, as it indeed can be a healing experience. And then lastly, the warm welcome from cathedral staff, clergy and parishioners was gracious and humbling. I mean, just the use of those words says so much. It was one of the most transformative experiences of his life, and he's most grateful for everyone, for the role they played in this short but intense chapter of life. This is those same words that are being used to describe communitas earlier, and the same words people are sharing with their experiences of walking pilgrimage. Okay, on to another one. Being personally welcomed was a great blessing. I felt very seen and understood as a pilgrim, and I was very eager to show the pilgrim connections there. I think it's very, very important. And to stand before the miracle windows, as I always describe to pilgrims, these portray stories of people who were here in the 12th century. And I tell all pilgrims, you are the latest story. You are today's history. And so the fact that you've written your name into the pilgrim record and you're standing here looking up at these images brings you into this wonderful tradition of pilgrimage here at Canterbury Cathedral. I'm very pleased of the direction the cathedral is heading to make the pilgrimage experience a special one. Many thanks for making the end of our pilgrimage so special. You spent a lot of time and effort making us feel part of the pilgrim community. It's just what I was talking about, showing them the stained glass. It made an amazing experience even more memorable. So that was great to hear. Very special moment, made even more special with your greeting and introduction. The special in the inspiring spiritual ambience of Canterbury Cathedral, made the ending complete by the thoughtful and considerate reception. And somebody put, thank you for investing in this position of pilgrimage officer. So, people are really, really appreciating this mission. The fact that Canterbury Cathedral is the only cathedral to appoint a pilgrim officer. I know Durham Cathedral has the Centre for Pilgrimage and Prayer, and I've met James, who is running that. He's a lovely fellow, and they're doing a fantastic job. But it just goes to show that Canterbury Cathedral was the first, is leading in this, and maybe there is a tipping point in an argument with the economy of scale if pilgrimage grows in the United Kingdom for more cathedrals to adopt the approach that we've adopted. And York came down and reached out to us. I went back up there to meet them, and then we all went to Durham. I've met Winchester, Southwark and Rochester. So we're all kind of finding out how we can work together, and also with Reims and Arras, to enhance the pilgrim experience between us all overall, no matter what route they're walking. And some more here, a really wonderful welcome from Torrin, who was so enthusiastic and knowledgeable about the pilgrimage and the cathedral. It really made the end of our pilgrimage. What a joy, an unexpected experience, being shown the symbolism of the architecture, receiving stamps and certificates. Thanks again for making our final step so meaningful and moving, a truly uplifting experience. This word meaning is just right throughout all of the everything I'm doing here regarding pilgrimage. The welcome was so kind, I was quite moved. The welcome was truly extraordinary. We felt so well received and so well sent off, which is very nice. I did not expect any welcome or acknowledgement. Having conversed with someone in the shop, they sent them to the pilgrim office, and what a warm reception that lifted the spirits. Unexpected certificate, and that was a very nice welcome there. And of course, all the beauty and history wrapped in faith was overwhelming for them. this was from a young man who was really, really moved. I spent a lot of time with him because I know that his pilgrimage meant a lot to him. He'd lost a dear friend tragically, and so he was out there looking for a change of direction in life and meaning. And he wasn't really expecting this, but it really changed him. And he's been in touch since, which is quite lovely. And he went to my website and wrote one of the pilgrim stories and submitted it. So this was very good to show him around, because one of the volunteers got to the chaplain, and after the sermon, after the blessing, the chaplain then took him to the shrine and prayed with a very touching blessing. That was lovely. And then I was fortunate enough to meet him, and he went away feeling so moved by the whole experience, because I explained to him about the liminal aspect of pilgrimage, that once you leave, maybe you'll never be that person again, but you don't quite know the person you're going to become yet, and you're in the state of what Victor and the Turners, Victor Turner would describe as a betwixt and between, this liminal state of pilgrimage. And he really got it, really sort of moved him. And then the third slide, the welcome was humbling. We went over and above to make their journey truly amazing. So that was great. And again, they thought the blessing was wonderful. And they left with a true sense of purpose, with a feeling that they were not adventuring by themselves. That was a really wonderful thing to read. Another one, I was made to feel very special, and it was wonderful and unexpected way to complete my pilgrimage. And then this one I wanted to highlight as well, because this was a group of people who were, again, two of which were suffering tragic bereavement, and they came with a friend to walk pilgrimage. And they arrived with nervous anticipation, unsure of what to expect, but filled with hope. Beautiful sentence, because we all maybe feel that way when we're about to engage on a pilgrimage. Waiting to greet us was Torrin, who understands the profound significance of pilgrimage, and his calm presence and heartfelt welcome put our minds and hearts at ease. It was a wonderful thing for them to express. Got their first passport. With gentle wisdom, shared insights into the tradition of pilgrimage history and the sacred steps we were about to take. So the welcome here really cut through and meant a lot to them. His words brought depth and meaning to our purpose. So there was a lot going on there. And then when they went to the chaplain, they received a personal blessing to send them forth. It was a moment of quiet reflection and spiritual grounding, an unforgettable start to what promises to be a transformational journey. So for them to write that really meant a lot to me. They were a lovely group of people. And I knew that this was a very meaningful walk. So for them to write that later was really great to receive. And when they finished it, I heard from them the journey was one of the most profound experiences. And the heartfelt thank you to us all here, whose passion lit the past before them, and the chaplain whose blessing gave their steps meaning. Here's that word again. They really, really were touched by this. And this is not the kind of feedback you'll find on TripAdvisor. We walked through storms, memories and healing and emerged into the light. That's not TripAdvisor stuff. This is a lot more that you'll only get by inviting people who experience these meaningful journeys, such as pilgrimage, inviting them to express themselves or articulate how they felt. And they were so touched, this is funny, by the whole experience that one of them named their camper van after me, which I thought was absolutely wonderful, using the little go well as I sign off my emails with. I hear from them from time to time with a postcard or an email to tell me where they all are. They're still travelling around together as a group. So that was really wonderful. I think it bonded them together even more as friends. Here's a postcard we received from, I think it was Melbourne. Somebody took the time to write and post a card to us. We were touched by the kindness shown, especially to a young chap called Alfie here, who is one of the visit experience people who went out of his way above and beyond to show these people what they needed to see. And then this one, the final slide, it's nothing to do with me. This was one of our chaplains. But this young man was so touched by the blessing, he carried it with him throughout his whole journey. And look at his words. I'll never forget your blessing and our walk to the 0 stone. Your beautiful humbleness, good heart and farewell was with me throughout the whole route. It was a wonderful pilgrimage, and I will be grateful for you for life. So this young man to write those really emotional and profoundly touching words to our chaplain, because of a blessing to see him on his way. That's all it was, a blessing to say goodbye, which was clearly significant enough to really touch this young man. And so much so that 2,000 kilometres later, 3 months later, bless him, he took the time to write back. So look, that's it. Just going through the story of why I'm here, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and looking into the data that I've been collecting for the past 4 years now. It's a rich source of pilgrimage data, which somehow at some point may serve some anthropological study. But people are still entering into the survey, which is on the bookmark and online in various places. I'm still taking photographs and posting them up as on the Pilgrim Stone as my digital contemporary example, or capturing images of pilgrims, very similar to the way they did using stained glass back in the 12th century. So the Pilgrim office is now open. It has been for about 6 months. I've been in this role for about a year and a half now, and it is growing, and it is proving to be wonderfully successful. So do reach out if you have any more questions. Do come and see us at the Pilgrim office, and I hope we can all remain in touch and work together, keep working together to enhance the pilgrim experience. And I hope this gives you a little bit of insight into how important that work that we all do is. Thank you very much.